We've been on the air for over a year. You know what that means? Our first anniversary is here. It's time to party! No, seriously. For reals? Okay, look, we tried to get together, but it turns out the Atlantic Ocean is really big. But it doesn't mean we can't celebrate in podcast form. So join us as we look back to a year of Music Arcade, as well as a year of gaming. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Music Arcade. I'm Galen, the sound guy, Firestone.
I'm Ranakel, the party boy, Ranakel.
And I'm Eddie, and I would cheer with a glass of champagne, but that's way too expensive, so accept my huge bottle of water instead, please.
And for that, I will toast you with some coffee.
And I will toast you with some tap water as well. Also, yes, Ranakel is both my first and last nickname, like Mario.
Oh god, that movie. Wow. That one brings me back. That was awful, but awful in a good way. Like, I really think that one's so bad it's good. This isn't a movie podcast, that's the last I will say about it, but I think about that one fondly in spite of myself.
Blame Nintendo for naming both characters the Mario Brothers.
Right? That was the only way that script could have gotten away with that.
Pretty much.
It's been a year of this nonsense.
Yeah. A
whole dang year
like that.
Not every podcast can say they made it to a year of consistent, well, semi-consistent uploads, but we did it.
Pretty good about doing it every 2 to 3 weeks. I feel like a lot of that towards the end was my fault. I got really busy and brain dead over the last couple of months, so it's been hard for me to get my schedule together, and I ended up forgetting about the show a couple of times, and I'm really sorry about that.
And part of it was because I was too busy dying for half the year.
I'm without fault. You know, the crazy thing is that in spite of all that, we still haven't run out of video game music.
God willing, we never will. Like, it's just such a huge and expansive genre, and I think that's kind of one of the reasons why I started the idea of this podcast a year and a half ago. During that summer 30 Days of Game Music challenge. And I'm like...
I remember when we were doing that challenge, we kind of started just joking, maybe we'll do it like just one entry per game, and then I went full insane and I went, I'm gonna do just one per franchise if I can. We were just joking, nah, you don't need to do that. That's insane, man. And I somehow managed to, because that's the amount of games we have nowadays.
Yeah. Which is wonderful. But honestly, if we limited it to just the 80s, I'm pretty sure we would have been able to pull that one off. Like, even back on just the NES days, it didn't... How do I put this into words? It's just such a wide world out there, and kind of one of the mission statements of this show, at least for me, is to expose that wide world to as many people as possible, to games and soundtracks they may not have otherwise heard of or paid attention to. And I know my horizons have kind of broadened since we started this show, which is wonderful, and I hope the same is true of you guys and of the audience.
It is very true of me indeed.
I mean, I was here for the episode on the game I don't play, where we spent, I think, 2 hours talking about Final Fantasy XIV, so of course it did.
Oh yeah, by the way, Unwalker came out. Let's talk about that for an hour.
Oh god. Maybe next week.
I just want to say, before that episode, the idea of an automaton, in my mind, was like the Greek warriors who could move by themselves because of Age of Mythology. After that episode, my idea of an automaton is just, it's broken. Just ignore Age of Mythology.
You and a few million people, yes.
I showed a picture of this on my Discord. I actually saw one of those in the wild. I had to take a picture, and I immediately pinged Rana, and I'm like, you're joking, these things exist?
That thing looks like a Pokemon.
It looks really ridiculous. But even then, that goes into what we were talking about. Like, that's something we discovered over the course of this show, which I think is really kind of cool, even if it is a wacky and terrible instrument in all the wrong ways. Did I ever, that reminds me, Eddie, we were talking about that FF14 concert. I said I was going to send you the actual versions of the tracks that were both bad in that one. Both Awful Lahi and I don't know what was going on with Equilibrium. Did I ever manage to do that, or did I totally forget?
My memory sucks. You're asking the wrong guy.
Okay.
Well, all the more reason to send you these links once more.
Absolutely. Because those are both actually really good songs, and they were just mangled in the live performance. One intentionally, the other one, I don't know what was going on there. I will never forget, my reaction to hearing Equilibrium live. I got the joke with Awful Lahi. I got it. I didn't like it, but I understood what was going on there. Equilibrium still baffles me to this day. Man, we got to talk about so many things. Even just our last episode, was it? We talked about that Skyrim concert? That's not something I would have listened to on my own.
Same.
And here's a fun behind-the-scenes fact. Ran and I just love to joke at how often we've just been prophets with the podcast.
Right?
It's been, I think, 3 times so far.
I mean, at this point, I think we are the most important people in the video game industry.
I love the sound of that. I really do. That makes me happy inside in a way that you cannot possibly imagine.
Yes. It's obviously wrong, but...
Yeah, but it's wrong in the best possible way. Tell us about your prophecies. Let's bring it out there live to the world and talk about how we got to this point.
Oh boy, I actually have them listed on a recent comment I've made on our Discord. So the first time was when Galen was busy with freelance work, and Ren and I did an RTS episode. And the week the episode came out, a new Company of Heroes game was announced.
Nice.
So later on, we did an episode which was a grab bag of things we had been playing or games that we wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And in that game, I talked about a Viking-ish game called Tainted Grail,
right,
and B, a game called Kingdom Two Crowns. And if I recall correctly, on the exact day that our episode went out, a teaser came out for an expansion, adding a Norwegian, Scandinavian coat of paint to the game, let's say, to Kingdom Two Crowns. And the latest time actually happened on our latest episode, where we were talking about the Skyrim concert and how quite a few songs were repetitive. And I mentioned how if it was Jesper Kudd, even though his music can be a bit repetitive due to being very ambient heavy, I said that it would be at least interesting to see that in concert, because he works with a variety of instrument types, including electronic sounds and guitars.
Right.
And lo and behold, last week, the Assassin's Creed concert tour has been announced with guest participation by Jesper Kudd.
I love it. I love it.
We are oracles.
I love it.
And we should use our power for good one of those days.
I don't know. It sounds like getting more concerts out there and getting sequels and expansions to games you want sequels and expansions to are powers for good. I'm going to just make a hot take here. Entertainment is important.
Whoa.
Right?
You're being very bold right there.
Yeah.
Man, we are doing a podcast. I want to be a novelist, and you come with a hot take like that. How dare you?
Oh, and I work in the entertainment industry, so let's add that to the list. But, making people happy and making people have fun is an important thing, and giving people a reason to smile and not just trumble through life with the bare minimum. Entertainment is actually vital and important, and we should not be underselling its value. So, yeah, if your powers are making things happen for people who want them, then, yeah, you are using your powers for good, and don't ever undersell that.
I remember, speaking of underselling the value of entertainment, a survey that was happening a few months in the first COVID lockdown,
God.
which essentially asked which of the following professions you think are essential, which had artists right at the bottom of it by a huge margin.
Oof.
Even though in a lot of ways through whatever Netflix show, podcasts, and other forms of entertainment, artistry was what got a lot of people through those lockdowns.
Certainly got me there.
Yeah.
Like, if it weren't for streaming and if it weren't for playing video games, I would have been just an absolute wreck. I mean, I was already pretty messed up. The lockdown did a number on my mental health, but, like, I was able to get through it because I had something to escape into.
Exactly. And eventually, through things like what we do in there, some way to interact with others.
Yeah.
And that's important. That's something that's helped me as well, honestly, with pacing things, having things to look forward to in general, and also in particular when it comes to music. Like right now, when I play a new game and have some good tunes in my ears, I'm thinking not only this is sweet, but also this is sweet that I'm going to get to talk about that comes the next episode recording.
Right. Yeah, I've actually had a similar recontextualization now that I've been doing the show. Almost verbatim. Like, it's not just about enjoying it anymore, although I still do greatly. I bought, like, even more video game music not too long ago. But also the ability to share it and the ability to, like, the ability to talk about it and discuss it and break it down. I've been getting a lot more, like, I've been, like, dusting off my, like, music mixing chops, just trying to talk about mixing and talk about, like, the mechanicals, the technicals of game music now. And I'm still by no means an expert, but I feel like that's a skill that I kind of let lapse because I wasn't really using out in the real world, but now I kind of am, so...
I mean, I even brought up, I think it was our last episode, on our new segment on things we've been playing, that I never noticed something that Galen pointed out in an earlier episode about the different approaches to overworld themes in RPGs between Japan and the US. And then I started playing a bit of Genshin Impact and I went, God damn it, Galen was right.
I'm sorry, I need a moment now. The way you said that. Oh. I don't know why that's so funny to me. Well,
I'm glad it was, because it was meant to be funny.
And in a way, that lets me jump into another thing that I've kind of thought of to talk about in this episode, which is how through discussing the tracks we likes and the tracks others likes, we've also learned to know about each other.
Yeah. Like, I was playing Shin Megami Tensei 5, and I got the impression pretty early on that, you know what, Eddie would probably really like this soundtrack, because it's got that dark ambient thing he likes so much.
And to reflect that, I thought I'd select something which is among the tracks we've covered in past episodes. I thought, what is the most Galen track and what is the most Eddie track?
Okay.
That
oh boy, here it goes.
Among those you've picked. Which should I start with?
We were just talking about Eddie, so let's go with that.
All right. So, for Eddie, I am thinking about phosphorus acid, or as its technical term, H3PO4 from Surviving Mars, which is by George Trezoff. So it's got everything that's Eddie as far as I'm concerned. Calm ambient surface, check. Otherworldly or interesting in some way themes, check. Surprising depths once you lend an ear to it, check. East European composer Cecarino.
Before I say whether that fits me or not, I just want to bring up 2 points.
Yes.
First, I think it was our chill music episode, I was the one who brought up Surviving Mars.
Yes. That was episode 7.
Yes, so the soundtrack is known to me. And the second point I want to bring up is that ever since the game came out and I played it near release, I spent, I think, 2 full years constantly reloading and researching on Spotify to make sure the soundtrack had been released, because they took ages to release it on streaming. And so if the fact that I kept just F5 lookup, no F5 lookup for 2 years doesn't tell you anything, then yes, you were right, actually. Good job.
And since we have established we are absolutely prophets, it should release next week.
It's already out on Spotify.
No, all right.
It was, as of the time we did our 2 episode, it was already on Spotify.
No, and as for the most Galen song of them all, the most Eddie song was from episode 7. This one was from episode 6. And it's Crush 'Em All from Dynasty Warrior 7.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's got some iconic flair to it, some guitars, it's Dynasty Warriors. What's not Galen about any of that?
No, that's pretty on point. It's got the strong melody line, the groove. Yeah, I like that one a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah, so that's the kind of call I can make now, and that I certainly couldn't make at the start of the podcast.
I wish I knew this was a segment. I would have gone back over some of my choices over the years. Let's see if I can brain it out in terms of some of the songs I picked.
I was going to say, I'm afraid that I have nothing in my mind since you didn't bring it up earlier. So the only thing that I can think of that is a very Ranakel song is the alternative theme to Assassin's Creed Unity, because it uses the French national anthem.
As an aside, I did bring this earlier during the episode preparation, but then we decided to mostly wing it, but I kept it as a segment for myself.
I missed that. Have I mentioned that my brain has not been functioning throughout the month of December? I've been so busy and whacked out.
You actually have.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna keep this.
You might be the busiest person not called Santa Claus in the world at this moment in time.
Boy, howdy. You are not entirely wrong. Normally this is the dead season. This has not been the dead season. I have been up to my eyeballs in stuff, both personal and professional, and it's just like I have no brain in my head anymore. Okay. So, thinking back, the most Eddie song I can think of that I picked. Well, I know I've talked about Bloodstained before, so I'm going to go with the track from that, because I know he's big into the Gothic styling a lot.
True.
So
I have no idea what makes you think that.
He was, after all, an edgy teen.
Yeah. Oh God, weren't we all at one point?
No, I was a wholesome team. Thank you very much.
Okay. Fair enough. I believe you. And you
have no proof of the contrary.
I have no proof of the contrary, but I still believe you.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna have to go with something for Bloodstained, and then Rana. Your musical stylings are fairly similar to mine, but not like drastically so, and I think our Persona 5 episode really kind of bore that out.
Yes, it did.
Despite both of us liking the soundtrack, we both liked it in completely different ways. The songs I liked, you didn't, and the songs you like, I didn't.
It was an episode where we were basically aggressively disagreeing in an agreeable way with each other about a soundtrack we both love for diametrically opposite reason. First episode, Eddie wasn't in either.
You're right. I think we had to do that one because Eddie wasn't in. We had to pull the subject out real quick, and that was like, that's an easy one we could do.
Yeah, mostly because Eddie wouldn't have anything to talk about.
Yep. I have
Eddie?
to go over my long list of songs here that I put into the production.
Oh, by all means.
Nope, I think that was you.
What have I done again?
Oh, I was looking over previous episodes like Yakuza 0, and I'm like, I think you actually picked that one, not me.
Honestly, I'm trying to go over the tracks that I've picked for past episodes, and the worst part is that I've been consistently the guy who picks more ambient tracks.
Yeah.
And I cannot picture either of you in those tracks.
Yeah, which is why I went with tracks that you had picked on your episodes. That's way easier. I don't know why you're trying to play in hard mode. You have something to prove? Are you trying to flex on me?
Oh, God. All right. So I'm reminded of one of the most interesting Mandela effect moments of our career in this podcast, and that was the confusion over Star Fox.
Yes.
God,
this one
that
made me
was a
laugh,
mess.
and I just got reminded of it. I'm like, I'm going to pick Corneria's theme for this episode of In Space, and somehow you thought it was Star Wolf's theme, and you thought I picked Star Wolf's theme, and we both kind of came into this like, wait, I thought you picked this one.
Yeah, no, I think the confusion was that there were the Star Fox 64 Corneria's theme and the Super NES Star Fox Corneria's theme, which are both very different. And I thought the right one was on the wrong game, but it turns out it was the other way around, and it was right for the wrong reason or wrong for the right reason or something.
Meanwhile, I was just watching the chaos unfold and I was laughing my ass off.
As well you should be.
Indeed.
This is just one of those moments that, you know, look behind the curtain of this show. Every once in a while, something just kind of gets turned on its head, and we either have to just go with it or be like, man, I love how that happens sometimes.
And that's why you should occasionally try to attend the live recordings. Even though Galen's editing skills are nothing to be sniffed at, to say the least.
Thank you.
The live show has sometimes some very dumb stuff that filters through. Plus, you can hear a dog.
Plus, you can hear a
Lord.
dog.
Or sometimes somebody using a leaf blower.
Oh, God. I've had, like, every time we recorded on, like, a Monday, and thankfully this is a holiday weekend. This is the Monday after Christmas, for those of you wondering when we're recording this. I've had, like, the garbage truck go by, or the gardener, and I'm just like, go away. This is loud. This is too loud even for my soundproofing.
And that's not talking about the many times Galen has had to cut the sounds of bikers going past my window.
You have a lot of bikers in your town. I'm almost jealous.
I have no idea how that happened, but apparently we do.
I mean, the real reason is the sort of, like, dirt street hybrid bike that's popular in your part of the world is just cheap and easy to ride.
I think it's probably the delivery apps as well.
That's also probably a big part of it. But yeah, no, I've had some adventures in editing. I've had to edit out all sorts of weird stuff. I've gained an absolute hatred for keyboards over the course of this show.
Oh, how interesting.
No idea what you're talking about.
You just had to go type. Now I have to leave that in. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's underlined.
I didn't type anything. That was Rana.
Yes.
Fine,
That's
thanks,
what I mean.
Rana. I apologize for lumping you in with that, Eddie.
This time I wasn't using the keyboard.
I'm
This
demonstrating the kind of things you have occasionally to cut out. I try not to type and talk at the same time. I
Oh,
try. Doesn't mean I succeed.
we all have that problem. I've had to cut all three of us out from typing from time to time, and I'm at the point where my hands are like in my lap, and I'm borderline twiddling my thumbs, trying to prevent myself from typing stuff, knowing full well, give me half a chance, and I'll go go out of my way and do something silly.
It doesn't help that I think one of the only times we didn't start typing stuff down was an episode where we made, I think, 3 mistakes that we had to rectify on the following episode because we didn't look things up and we should have.
Yeah, it's
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
It really is. I will admit I prefer editing over having to retract, but still, like, man, preparation's hard, yo.
Indeed. Also, speaking about keeping your hands busy, at least, it's another way to do it compared to what you used to do mostly in Gathering of Gachas with some Arknights playing during the recording.
Yeah, I would play Arknights. I'm not playing it now, but I would and continue to do so. I would play, I would do just random mining or whatever in FF14 just to try to keep myself occupied.
Fishing. There was at least one episode that was entirely fishing, I remember.
You know what? You remember better than me. I believe you. I just don't remember that specific incident.
Yeah, in a way, that's why it's worked. That's because you enter this fugue state and can do that while concentrating on the episode.
Yeah, and it says a lot between the two projects. Like, Gathering of Gotcha started life as one thing and kind of metastasized into a completely different thing that I was not particularly interested in for a lot of. Like, every time Fire Emblem Heroes got brought up, I would zone out. And I remember I even had one, like, serious old man yells at Cloud moment where I just started yelling about the existence of Fire Emblem. And I edited all that out of the video. I'm like, we don't need this in here. Or not out of the video, out of the final audio.
So Fire Emblem musical episode 1.
Oh God, don't do that to me.
Actually,
please go ahead and do that to me if you really want to. But like, we made Eddie sit through FF14. May as well if you really want to, and I will try to get into it. But
I think the issue is that with FF14, we had 2 people who could talk about the game. With a Fire Emblem, it's going to be Rana talking, and the 2 of us just
it wasn't even Rana; it was Kite.
Yeah, but if we do it on this podcast, it would be just Rana talking about it, and the 2 of us just nodding while we play something on our phones.
Unless we invite Gator folks who notoriously enjoys turn-based strategy.
There you go. I mean, honestly, like, come March or so, a turn-based strategy episode may not be out of the way, because that's when Triangle Strategy releases, so that may actually be a good thing for the future.
That's a good point.
In fact, fun fact for people who are listening but aren't privy to the behind-the-scenes discussions, we were going to do I believe, a turn-based strategy episode exactly when Galen was busy, and we ended up going for panic mode, and turned out Rana and I both dig RTSs and Galen doesn't, so we did an RTS episode.
Yep.
And that was when we started being oracles.
Yeah, and that was I remember editing that one, and that was the first time that I actually edited one of these podcasts without knowing what was in it in advance. And that was a very interesting experience, listening through it and hearing you guys just talk about this stuff. Although I do remember towards the end, you went off on a giant tangent that I'm like, I wish I could cut this, but I have no idea where or how. Like, I don't have enough knowledge of what's relevant and what isn't to talk about this, but you guys went off on a tangent of actual, like, gameplay, and I'm like, this is, like, I don't mind this on occasion, but a half an hour of this is a little much, guys.
You're saying you guys. I was at recording. I was trying to add a point, but Rana kept adding stuff, and I was going just... how can I join
the bus, you traitor? Why don't you?
You know it's true. People can listen to the episode and check.
Yeah, the edited version of the episode.
Which still has all of that junk in there because I couldn't get rid of it.
All right.
Like, that's my point. You guys outmaneuvered me. I couldn't edit around that. As much as I might want to cut out a half-an-hour tangent just talking about strategy games. Not the music.
Blipping played.
I was even talking to
also
Rana earlier before we started recording that that episode of the RTS games was basically our version of you guys talking about Persona games. Just we were slightly a bit more agreeable with each other's choices, but it was still just the two of us talking around in circles and almost aggressively agreeing with one another. Because it turns out that when it comes to RTS, that's where Rana and I have overlapping interests. And by overlapping,
that's
I
something
mean...
we also discovered.
Yeah, and by overlapping, I mean the Venn diagram is just a circle.
Look, Total Annihilation is one of the greatest games ever. In any case...
Yeah, I was waiting for Eddie to respond to that because that was clearly
Yeah, me
bait,
too.
and he just did not take it.
I just said that the Venn diagram was a circle. I have nothing to say to that. It's a good game.
Okay, fair enough.
I was expecting you'd back me up on that and agree.
But instead we got crickets.
Yeah.
But in general, I think it's one of the reasons why this podcast works so well, why we've been able to do this for a year with relatively few problems other than my inability to keep the schedule. And that is, we are fairly simpatico when it comes to this stuff. We may not have identical tastes, but we're certainly on the same page with each other about a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. And if there's something we disagree on, we can talk about it. We should talk about it.
We absolutely should.
To appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Absolutely.
As an aside, since I've realized that technically I'm the only host that has been there on every single episode where I take a week off and it's just the two of you when.
I mean, let's do it.
And most importantly, what are you even going to talk about?
Well, item one, let's not brute force it, but we can absolutely do an episode like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we can talk about Castlevania, about heavy metal music, about Mega Man again.
Mega Man.
Yes, games I have no interest in. Oh, wait.
Such a shame, isn't it? You threw the gauntlet, now you deal with the consequences.
I guess.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things about this one as well. Every time we've had to lose one of our hosts for a week, it's usually because one of us has a problem, not because we planned on it in advance. So if anything, this just goes to show Rana's resilience in being able to continue doing the show, whereas my schedule
or the fact that I don't have a job.
I was trying not to say it, but if you're going to call yourself out, then I'm not going to disagree.
Yes, I will. I mean, it's something that happens, something that I'm doing, that I have done a lot of work in the past to not be ashamed of, because that's just something that I'm working on. That's something that is not going to last forever. It's something that I can't be in denial about.
Yeah.
Because I'm a mature adult.
And that's another reason I like talking with you guys. I know you were semi-joking, but you shouldn't be at all, because, you guys are actually adults about this. There was another potential co-host to the show when it was first starting to form over a year ago now. And I had to reject this host. And I'm not going to name names, but the big problem was they had a chronic inability to defend their opinion. And they tended to take it personally when someone disagreed with them.
Yeah, and that's just not really conducive to opinion when you are on the defensive.
Yeah.
Doesn't really make for an interesting episode. Makes more for a reality show script than anything.
Yeah, exactly. So don't get me wrong. I love this guy to death. He's a good buddy of mine. Hope he's doing well. But the truth is, I'm glad that the three of us can have our opinions, disagree on them, and still come back week after week, month after month, and be like, all right, let's do it. This is great.
It does help that we usually joke a lot about how different we are, so...
Yeah. Except for the points where the Venn diagram is a perfect circle.
Yeah, the Venn diagram does meet in the middle. That's the whole point. Like, we're not, like, completely alien to each other, which is another thing that works. Like, as I said, we're fairly simpatico. We have a lot of things in common. We have a lot of things different, and I think that works to our benefit as a whole.
I agree.
It makes me proud to do this show with you guys. Like, I can't say I have the same problems I had with Gathering of Gotchas, which was largely, in the end, a lack of interest. And with Gathering of Gotchas, that made me discover that I kind of hated gacha games, or the fact that I'm still playing one now kind of is a testament to how good that one is, as opposed to the genre as a whole. Whereas...
Honestly, the realization on yourself was probably one of the greatest legacy this podcast had.
Yeah, it saved me a ridiculous amount of money. Like, man.
Yeah.
I
may not be
was
sponsored, but when you think that way, you earn a lot of money making podcasts.
Yeah. I absolutely have. My take-home income has actually gone, like, way up. If I was still playing gacha games when my office frickin' exploded last year or 2 years ago, I would not have been able to afford repairs. Flat out.
And then you spent it all on game soundtracks.
Oh, shut up. Come on, really?
Now I want a future episode where Galen, while streaming our recording, just has a full stacks of CDs as the background behind his chair.
Yeah, if I had, like, a table back here, or especially a cat-proof one, I'd probably do that and have a couple of my figures back here as well. But unfortunately, there's just no room there for me to do that. I wish I could. Maybe when I move. I'm seriously considering getting out of California in the next couple of years, so...
Honestly, I like to think that the background is certainly more distinctive than, say, a shelf with a few figures on various gameplay swag.
Yeah. I mean, not everyone has semi-homemade sound absorbers behind them.
Yeah.
I say semi-homemade because they were, like, by a professional acoustician friend of mine, but he did make them himself, so...
No.
Like, this is just lumber and a specific kind of rock wool and cloth. But they're, like, it's the specific kind of rock wool that absorbs specific frequencies. Like, he actually did a lot of math, despite how simplistic these look.
And to those of you listening to the recorded version of this podcast, check the VODs on Galen's Twitch channel.
Yep.
Good catch.
Fair enough. Yeah, and then just to add to that, the paint job is actually the same, well, not the same exactly, but a similar color to the internal paint job of Westlake Studios here in Los Angeles, which is where Thriller was recorded. So...
Now I have a song in my mind.
I mean, that's kind of one of the greatest pop albums of all time, so, like...
Yeah.
It's not a bad song, I just have one stuck in my mind.
There you go. So, yeah, no, I to people in the know of audio stuff, this background's a lot more impressive than you might think. To other people, they're like, why does that guy have pillows hanging on the wall, and why is his room red?
It's more of a...
Why does he have blank canvases in the background?
Oh, that does look like a blank canvas, doesn't it? Yes. Okay. I didn't think of that.
Blank
That's good.
spot on a blank background. A classic.
And here we're recording a happy little podcast. Galen, the Bob Ross of podcasting, with his canvases.
Oh no! I don't have the hair for that. My hair is this, not like the poof.
You couldn't have hair like that with how in-ear monitors are important for your line of work.
Oh my god, I would have to switch to in-ear. No, don't make me do in-ear monitoring. No.
Yeah.
Oh god, in-ear monitors are the bane of my existence. Like, they don't sound bad. They're just, to me personally, super uncomfortable.
You already have the beard. That's good enough.
Oh my god. I'm sorry. I actually had someone briefly think that I was Michael Stana, who you guys may not know. He's the lead singer of a Swedish death metal band called Dark Tranquility. Someone thought I was him once, and I'm like,
Oh.
do I look like him? And kind of without my glasses and my hair down, I do look a little like him. It was very surprising.
I fully understand. When I had long hair, people readily assumed regularly that I was in a band. It
When
goes
I
with
had
the territory.
I live in a very religious city, so when I had long hair, people just assumed I was the Antichrist, and when I entered a bus, it would part like the Red Sea.
Okay, but has someone literally screamed at you in the street calling you Satan? Because that's happened to me.
Same, actually, yes.
I think people here are too constrained to do that.
And a couple of time Highlander.
I never got that one.
God. That's new.
Yeah, that's because I like long coats.
Fair enough. Anyway, I'm sorry. This got kind of off to the weeds, but you know what? That's fine. We're talking
We're
about
celebrating
our journey and our
And honestly, getting sidetracked is part of the show, and I would have been kind of shocked if we didn't have one section like that, because that's also part of what makes this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I don't know of any podcast on the planet except maybe like Black Box Down that just sticks completely to topic the entire time.
No, definitely not.
I think 2/3 of this episode will be us going off topic, because there's no better way to celebrate this podcast than us going off topic, because we go off topic on every episode. It's just that Galen has to cut.
We really do. And honestly, I don't mind it, because I love the exchange of ideas, and even if it leads to some weird places sometimes. Like, apparently 2/3 of the regular hosts of this podcast have been called Satan in the street at some point.
Yeah, that's learning. And besides, we have the ability to notice that we're going off topic and return on track after a while.
Right.
Which makes this manageable.
You know, we've been doing this for nearly a year, and we've had a lot of different variations. The main format that we use is we each pick a few songs and kind of rotate between them on a theme. It's kind of like an enhanced show and tell, which is good, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that format. But I've gained kind of a special sort of appreciation for when we go off that format, when we talk about concerts, or when we talk about the news, or when we do something very different. And that's every few episodes. I'm glad it's not every episode, but I do like it when we go off format. I do like the exploration of greater topics in the greater world of game music.
I appreciate that we have a format, and I appreciate that we are not constrained to that format.
Yes. And I think that was another
problem.
Deal
with discussion when we go out of the format.
Yeah.
We don't feel frozen in place.
And I think that was another problem that we had with Gathering Gotchas. Like, each of us would have our own topic, whatever game we were bringing to the table, but we'd be on wildly different topic threads. Sometimes I'd be talking about the legality of a game situation. Sometimes you would be talking about, like, how this works or doesn't work. Like, the story comes up, like, we never really found, like, especially towards the end of that one, we never really found, like, the connecting tissue between the segments. They were just entirely disparate.
Yeah, and since the gacha communities tend to be pretty insular, that's a bit tricky. It was one of the goals to kind of bridge that, but it wasn't any easy feat.
No.
One of the episodes I was the most proud of for Gathering of Gachas was when I decided, you know what, there's this Dragon Quest gacha game that I have no intention of playing long term, but I'm going to try anyway for a couple of weeks and say my impressions.
Yeah.
I think that was a good one. Conveniently, what took 2 weeks at the time can only take like 5 minutes to listen to this or that tracks I want to have an opinion on in particular before reporting in there. The discoverability is so much easier and smoother.
Yeah, I think the most, for this especially, I think the most time I put into research for this show is like 4 hours, which is listening to the Skyrim concert twice.
And I think the weirdest things I've done for research for this show was to send an interview to a Japanese composer who answered me very politely. And unfortunately, he didn't really have the time to answer the questions in detail because he was actually so busy he had to be forced on a short break because he hadn't taken a day off in the last 2 years. Because that's what Japanese composers do, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Nobuo Uematsu himself is like, I'm too tired to continue doing full soundtracks anymore, and which is a real shame, but at the same time, like, look at the amount of work he's put in over the decades. Like, yeah, I get it. If anybody deserves a retirement on a high note, it's him.
No kidding.
Yeah. As for me, I think the one time that I spent the most on quote-unquote research was when we discussed the fact that the Olympics opening ceremony had a lot of video game music, as I actually watched the opening ceremony. I think I watched in full. I might have skipped a bit after I realized that the video game music playlist started looping, but I watched like at least some 4 hours of that thing, and that was. I enjoyed those opening ceremonies, but I don't usually sit down for the entrance, the athletes entrance, which I sat down for that episode.
Oh, and one of the things that I mean, it's not really a research, but I'm the one in charge of uploading the episodes and writing the episode description, which means that since we all believe in properly crediting the artists, I do research on who are the composers for the tracks we're talking about, which is sometimes a pain in the butt to research because some companies like to just wrap the composition under the whole umbrella on the company rather than crediting the individual composer, which I hate.
Right.
But beyond that, that's led me down some rabbit holes almost every other episode where I'm like, after we've talked about a track, oh, this guy also did that, and that. Generally, I report that in our internal chat as well, because I'd hate to keep those pearls of wisdom for myself.
Oh, yeah. No, it's always so fascinating to go like, what else has this person done? And discovering some just like random gems. It's really wonderful.
And just using the podcast as an opportunity to give more focus, more attention, and more credit to those that craft the songs we enjoy and love is something that I'm very happy of, very proud of, and very glad I got this occasion every 2 to 3 weeks to do that.
Yeah, it's the amount of growing as reviewers and as commentators we've done since we started this is really truly remarkable, and the amount of things we've been able to learn, not just learn but share and put into practice, has been huge. Like, I've been brushing up on my music. I mentioned this before, I've been brushing up on my music theory. I've been brushing up on my mixing techniques. I've been like getting back into the whole music side of things in my career, which is something I always wanted to do and never really found the excuse because I just don't have that sort of clientele. But now I'm like doing it again just for fun, which is...
Yeah, and it's weird. I don't have any creative background of any kind, but I remember distinctly last time I went to a shop that had a music section. I was just randomly looking at keyboard prices and going, maybe I could dabble in it for fun. Maybe. Since that's a bigger part of my life than it used to be.
I mean, since we are talking about stuff that we've done because of the podcast in real life, I think it's fair to point out that I almost got a job solely by saying I do a podcast with a dude who's actually a professional sound engineer in LA. And like half my job interview was just a guy, wait, how did you meet him?
We met because I posted a metal track on a random Discord I was on that you also happened to be on, and we just sort of clicked.
Pretty much. Sadly, I didn't get the job because they were looking for someone more senior, but like it completely derailed the conversation. The interview was meant to be half an hour, and I think we went over an hour in that interview, and half of it was the guy just going, "How did you meet this dude? How did it? How?"
Yeah,
Well,
generally my conversations tend to go, oh yeah, and I can't really stay that long because I have to record the podcast in half an hour. Wait, you have a podcast? Yes, it's the third time I've mentioned it. You've never checked it out, but it's okay. I respect your taste. If one of you is
people to
listening
whom I talk
today,
about it,
you're a trooper.
and most of the people to whom I talk about the podcast sadly don't listen to it because they don't speak English. But
Yeah, that's
I
also
know
a barrier.
I know at least one person from Texas is listening to this, and you know who you are. You are seen.
I love it. Hello, person from Texas.
Howdy.
Oh, God.
Okay. A Frenchman saying that is so weird.
I'm trying to adapt.
But on the topic of us improving, I think something that really I really started to notice as we went along is how we've learned to play off of each other. Because on the first couple episodes, we were basically talking one over the other from time to time. I think every 5 minutes, someone would want to interject something, and we would talk over one another. But eventually, we didn't stop it because we are very opinionated people. But we've been building a very nice dynamic, I'd say.
Yeah.
We know our roles more or less. As I was joking before recording, Rana is the guy with the puns. I'm the guy who stays quiet way too much, but when it's my turn to talk, I won't stop talking. And Galen's the guy who's facepalming, looking at the chaos that we are creating, and that's
right now
beautiful.
I'm facepalming over the fact that you just said that over your dog going on a rampage, which means all of that staying in the episode. Thanks.
Hey, if it's the chaos theme,
It does. I just wish that chaos didn't affect me while I was editing so much.
Yeah, what we occasionally do, especially in sections we know are cut, is to leave little messages for the consideration of future Galen when he's going to edit the episode. Future Galen is such a nice guy.
Sometimes even when the part will be on the final episode, such as on our episode on the Final Fantasy XIV concert, where I gave a message to future Galen that would be where the bleep would go.
And sure enough, that's where it went. Although I don't really blame you for that one either, because that was like, as a first-time listener running into that song, like, yeah, I get it. You weren't in on the joke. I understand the confusion and why you're cursing at it.
It was made worse by the fact that I wasn't watching. I had it in the background, which I mentioned on that episode.
Man, it's funny, we keep coming back to the FF14 concert as a topic. I really am kind of looking back at it as that may have been one of our best episodes. Just because of how in-depth we were about each and every song and how it all came together.
Yeah, conveniently, that concert was podcast-sized, so that worked.
It worked very well, yeah.
I was even trying to mentally build a top 3 list of episodes that I'm the proudest of, and that episode is up there. I am not sure I would put it as my favorite episode of the ones we've made, but it's sort of a tie between the 3 favorites of mine. It's a really good one, and I'm glad that I could add something to the discussion, being the guy who doesn't play the game.
After we pushed you that you would be able to do that for about 2 weeks of uninterrupted push.
Okay. Look, I have anxiety issues. All right, just
Look, all I'm saying is that we were right and you were wrong.
Oh God.
I'm sorry.
and I'm the guy who throws other people under the bus.
Oh.
That's a semi at this point.
So, before we move on to the "What Are We Playing Lately" segment,
Which is a new segment that I think is an excellent idea, and we're going to keep at it.
I agree fully. I would like to just see what the three of us, our plans are for the upcoming year, and what's going to be something we want to try to accomplish between year 1 and year 2. I, for one, would love to get the new logo situation handled, is kind of my first thought.
Yep, that's still being worked on. I've already contacted the person. She's had delays because of other work that piled on, including some other side stuff. I told her we have the time, but this is very much on the way. Speaking of the logo, I'm the one that made the logo for the first episode on, mostly because I was expecting something to arrive and then I had to upload and I had to put a logo to make the episode and make the podcast. So I basically tinkered one in like an hour, which is why on the very first episode, instead of just Music Arcade, there's written Music Arcade's temporary logo made in a few minutes because we needed one, and this part is in Comic Sans so that it doesn't become a long-lasting temporary thing because you deserve better. But hey, at least no Space Invader, so that means the goats are safe for now. Private joke, by the way. And then we've used it for over a year.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep
I was
using
going
that temporary background for the second episode, and I was told no. That was, in retrospect, the good thing to tell me.
Yes, it was.
There is a dark part of my pitch black heart that's like, he threatened to punch a goat if we do this thing. It would be funny if goat gets punched. It would be awful. And the rest of me is like, but animal abuse. But there's me going, but Rana's gonna go out and punch a goat, and I kind of need to make this happen.
The threat was mostly there because I happen to know at least 2 places where goats are within punching range in my village.
I do feel
The
like Rana
trails
going
are
off to. I feel like Rana going off to punch a goat would be the quickest way to have a series of episodes without Rana for the first time.
I don't think he'd be gone for that
Very
long.
good point.
I don't think he'd be gone for that long unless you include, like, breaking and entering.
You vastly overestimate how hard I can punch a goat.
Stop tempting me to make this happen, as terrible, terrible, terrible as it is. That too, Geister.
Yes.
Another thing I want
goats
to
are
do,
punched for the sake of this episode.
Yep. Right now, both of our themes, our music, both of our intro music and the new stinger I added for What Are We Playing Lately, which probably deserves a better name of a segment. I want to replace those. I want to get some actual music commissioned. I not a good composer myself.
To the segment.
I'm sorry?
Hmm?
I gave a name to the new segment on Discord, and we agreed it was nice.
Crap. Again, my brain is bad. What name did you give it? I'm so sorry.
Music Arcade now playing.
God damn
Oh,
it, that is
yes.
good. You're right. Okay, Music
Yeah.
Arcade now playing. That's its new name now.
Good.
What-
that was the new name.
Anyway, I'd like to get some new music commissioned and possibly like an outro as well. So that's something I'd like to do. One thing I would like to do, like right now, the VOD is just the VOD is just me and then you guys over Discord. I would love it if we could somehow get Eddie a webcam and actually do more like a Zoom thing and actually have all three of us for the live version. I don't think that's going to be viable for the for the audio version, in no small part because that involves picture editing, which is something I'm not as qualified to do as audio editing. But at least for the live version, I'd love to get to that point.
That would be pretty nice. What I like in my list of things, if yours is done?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay. As far as objectives go for myself for the podcast, I think surviving the Mars period will be a good one, because they basically decided to release all of the video games around that time, and that episode is going to get spicy. So isn't your birthday around that period or a bit later too?
My birthday's in May.
Okay, so we have time to resurrect. Good. Aside from that, I'd love for one episode to secure an interview or a guest for good this time.
Yeah, we've been
Bring
trying to get an
some
actual like
inside spice.
We've been trying to get an on-page interview for a while.
Although we haven't exactly been trying that actively.
No.
Yeah, I tried to reach out via email to a composer in the US, but didn't hear back, probably because they already received tons of email from other people, and there's no reason to believe I'm more special than those people.
I have another composer that I've been like friendly with on Twitter. I'm not going to go so far as to call us friends, but we at least have communicated back and forth a number of times, that I think I'm going to try to get them on at some point, especially since they do have another game coming out fairly soon.
Ooh.
That's a long shot, and I make no promises, but the attempt, I can see it being made. Like, it's a long shot, but it's not impossible.
Honestly, we are all about those long shots, so might as well take them.
I mean, it's a long shot that this show has lasted as long as it has, and has been as at least emotionally successful, yeah.
Yeah. Might as well keep on taking those Hail Marys.
May as well. What is it Wayne Gretzky once said? You miss all the shots you don't take?
Something like that.
So yeah, I'd love to get. I agree. I'd love to get some more guests on. We had our old Gathering of Gotcha's buddy Ryan on for a show about the FF7 remake concert not too long ago. That was nice, but that's not like a real quote unquote guest, I guess. I mean, obviously he was a real guest and a real good guy, and I love having him on. But like,
it's a friend, not an insider.
Yeah, it's not really industry relative. It was just another guy I went to the concert with, since neither of you two did.
Given the fact that it was the FF7 remake, really, it was more of a reunion.
Yes, you made that joke then too. Ha ha ha.
Oh, did I?
You did.
I should get no material.
No, that's
I think we made the joke in the title, didn't we? Or one of us did.
Oh yeah, that's possible. Oh yeah, the episode titles are also my fault, by the way. Galen has a temporary episode title that when I think to check in the file properties, and then I generally look at the list of topics and pick up after thinking on it for way too long.
When it comes to this stuff, you're funnier than I am, but I like giving at least some kind of recommendation.
Thank you. Your recommendations are always excellent.
Since we're talking about who writes what, I write the intros most of the time.
You do.
And Galen is great at reading them, for the record. He just gets the joke instantly and just runs off doing it better than I could.
Yeah, I at least try to do a line read properly when I have lines to read.
But going back to the talk about things we'd like to do in the next year, I'm not sure if maybe the next year would be the right time for it, but eventually a Patreon campaign I think would be nice, especially since then we could get more resources from that to maybe, I don't know, go to concerts, since we all live in separate countries. We can't all just talk about concerts that happen in the US.
I mean, you say that like I'm not going to go to concerts anyway, but anyway, continue.
But yeah, I think maybe the first 1 or 2 years might not be the best, since I'm still dealing with some health stuff that are the reasons I've missed so many episodes this year. So maybe once everything is resolved and we have a more stable release schedule,
When
maybe
it will
that
be
would be a nice thing.
justifiable.
Exactly. I think that would be a cool thing to have, and potentially from there we could have our own website with extras and whatnot.
Even
Also, an easier
before
way
that,
to check the
though,
playlists.
I think we had also talk about increased social media presence.
Yeah,
like
I
having
would
a
love to
specific
hire a
music
social
art
media
Twitter.
person to do our Twitter
Yes.
and to do our everything else and just try to get bodies in here. Because as much as I love this show, I am anxious as hell and terrible at advertising. And I would love to get more people listening to this. And I think we have something worthwhile to say. If we
Yes.
didn't, like, I wouldn't be have done this for a year, but yeah,
Like, it's enough to interest all scatterbrains.
yeah.
I mean, on that same line of thoughts, I kind of kick myself over the fact that I'm the marketing guy because I do work in marketing, and both I and Galen keep forgetting to bring up our email address.
Yeah.
music.arcade.podcast at gmail.com, by the way.
In case
the
I forget the outro again.
All the more reason to get a website going as well, because that way people could just go to the website and click buttons.
Yeah, exactly. And I could do some of it, but like I've said when we had discussed it, I'd rather not take a responsibility that I don't feel confident in sustaining.
Nor am I particularly comfortable foisting a bunch of additional responsibility on all of you. Like, I don't want to make this whole thing everyone's work. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe I disagree with Eddie. Maybe this year is the year we finally start a Patreon and try to grow this brand a little bit.
It might be. I think it's a matter of finding the right time when it's correct. It might be this year. It might be the next. I think it's hard to tell. It's more of a case of when are we more stable. I think I'll put it. Because the past few months have been chaos. Let's be honest.
I mean, let's be honest, it'll never not be chaos, and I don't foresee this becoming anyone's full-time job, so we just sort of have to live with the whirlwind, I think, right?
That we do.
And that we have been doing for a year now.
Wow. Look at us. Well, you know what? Here's hoping for another awesome year with you guys, because this has been a blast so far.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
May 2022 be a better and more fruitful but equally awesome year to talk about games. And
damn
music.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. The awesome levels are just right, but we could do with more goodness and more fruitiness.
And with that, I can't think of a better time to get into Music Arcade Now Playing.
Name not forgotten this time.
Yes, I actually remembered. Thank you, Eddie, for reminding me.
I was very proud of that name.
It's a very good name, and
For
I
good
feel
reason.
like a
It's
complete...
excellent.
Okay, behind the curtain again. I have botched the living hell out of this episode, and even just getting to this point where we're finally recording on a Monday, I have managed to botch it 2 weekends in a row. So, like, the fact that I remembered anything is kind of incredible.
I think it's kind of funny that I made a joke about not having champagne at the opening when we all kind of are talking like we're drunk today.
I don't think we're just talking like we're drunk at all.
Yeah, no, it's just brain stuff.
Yeah. And then admittedly, like, I don't deal with a lot of happy drunks. Like, the drunks that I deal with tend to be the angry Irish types. When they get drunk, bar fights are about to happen. So, like...
Oh,
no.
So the kind you kind of start betting on people.
And I'm too fat to get easily drunk.
Yeah, no, that's the sort of drunk where I have to take people outside to an alley to make sure the dive bar doesn't get thrashed, because it's about to be.
I imagine you develop a sense for that after a while.
You do, you really do. Anyway, this is totally off the wall. So yeah, no, we have not been talking like we're drunk. We have been talking...
Like we're
okay.
Yes, we
but
have
not
been
drunk.
talking.
So we can actually bring this now playing around to our very first episode we talked about the Game Awards, because two of us have actually been playing two of the games we talked about a year ago, but now backwards.
Yes.
Rana, you've been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I've been playing Hades.
Yes, correct. Wanna begin?
Sure. Correct. Hades is a really cool soundtrack. Can confirm.
Yes.
I like its use of guitars. I mean, Supergiant's always very good at this. They release their whole soundtrack on YouTube. Like, there's a button on the menu, like, here, go to the soundtrack. Like, cool, thank you.
What's your thought about the theremin used to represent the souls of the damned?
I'm going to say something kind of awful, as I haven't actually noticed it.
Oh, really? Because it's everywhere.
It is everywhere, and it just sort of felt as part of the tapestry so much that it hasn't really stood out in my mind. Like,
which it shouldn't for songs that are so high-pitched as those.
Yeah. I don't know. My brain is like, man, the boss tracks have some really cool guitar stuff going on, and that, like, performed track with Eurydice is, like, really good.
I believe it's Ashley Barrett was singing.
Ashley Barrett, as always.
Yep. The usual suspects in that game for Supergiant,
Yeah.
Ashley Barrett and Logan Cunningham kind of everywhere.
There is one surprise in the second phase of the final boss, in that they have a guest guitarist from Japan, if I recall correctly.
Oh, wow. I have not gotten that far. I've gotten to the final area, but I have not gone to the final boss yet. That'll probably be tonight. I'm going to try to make that happen, assuming I get a good RNG run.
I'll just say this much. There's a reason that track is on my workout playlist, and there's a reason why Ranakel called me an insane for adding it to that playlist.
It goes that hard. I'm looking forward to it already.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, that's one of two games I want to talk about. We'll come back around to me in a bit. I'm really enjoying this one. It just feels really good.
Yes, indeed.
Rana, your turn. Final Fantasy VII Remake. When last we spoke about the game, you hadn't played it. And that's twice now we've spoken about it, both in our very first episode and talking about the FF7 Remake concert.
Yes.
Now we have you here having actually played some of it. Does it recontextualize any of the music for you, or is it still kind of what you already knew was there?
Okay, the first thing I did when I launched the game, one, I was happy I could access the options menu before actually getting into the game.
Yes.
Two, I audibly say, they put One Winged Angel right in the opening?
They did.
Those madmen, they're not even hiding it. Cool, I wasn't spoiled anything that I wouldn't know right away. Good.
Yeah, I've been very careful with spoilers for that game to the best of my ability. That FF7 Remake has a plot twist, is one of the few plot twists out there in the universe that I consider sacred. Like, no, I am not spoiling this for people. They need to discover it themselves. So, musically speaking, yeah, I think they're kind of poking at that a little bit, which kind of bothers me.
Also, within the now comment section of I was amazingly right, I think my first take that I remember from just hearing the Hellbuster theme, which was that FF7, the original, had its theme, while FF7 Remake's theme is FF7.
Yep.
Was pretty correct.
Yeah, no, I was very like, that is on the nose like you would not believe, and I'm very impressed and very pleased that you got that immediately.
From just one music track, which goes to say how much information music can convey.
Really does. So yeah, no, you called it a game about FF7, and I'm like, that is on point, is what that is. Yeah,
pretty proud of that one. But yeah, pretty enjoyable. Some of the tracks, I mean, there's tracks that are very good, especially when they try to get weird.
Mm-hmm.
The music albums you get in-game are a prime example of that, where they are really trying to have fun with the originals.
They are. Okay, I gotta talk about this one because this annoys me. So there's two versions of the original soundtrack. There's the 7-disc regular version, and there's the 8-disc fancy version. The 8th disc is all of those weird tracks. I don't have any of them in my version.
Oh,
None
no.
more Square Enix. None more Square Enix.
Yeah. I mean, the only way it could be more Square Enix is if they invented a new audio format just for the soundtrack.
Just
Right?
to piss off Galen.
Oh, the fact that I have an actual near concert CD is kind of incredible. Like, they actually re-released one of their old Blu-rays on CD, and I'm like, I'm buying this immediately. I don't care if I already own this. I need to tell them this needs to happen more. Please give me a format I can make use of. I'm an audio engineer. I don't have access to Blu-ray audio ripping. I can't do that. Like, I don't have the tech for it because there's no reason for me to get it other than Square. Stop it, you nerds. Sorry, this is an old topic.
I'm just gonna say, if Rana's Oracle powers hit again, and they come out with an entire CD set where everything is in a .ff7r format, it's his fault, all right? He said it.
Also, the track names will be in Wingdings.
Of course. I mean, Square.
Yeah,
Probably more like Ancient Runes or whatever the Cetra spoke. Remind me, back in the original FF7, there was like the Temple of the Ancients actually had like writing from them, right? Like, am I misremembering that?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I believe so. I don't remember in details. Anyway, for the rest of the soundtrack, the part that isn't on the CDs, which are some very interesting takes, there are some pretty good ones. It goes nicely with the altered pace of the game, and some tracks have the interesting effect of making me go back to listen to the original game's soundtrack and enjoy the original, because it sheds a new light on it, or just because some tracks like Bombing Mission, for instance, are still incredible.
yeah. The FF7 soundtrack is incredibly strong. It's not my absolute favorite, but it is up there.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and
it doesn't need to be number one to just be that good.
Yeah, and frankly, the fact that a lot of the tracks are just not even changed, just reorchestrated in remakes, says an awful lot about how much that stood on its own. Like, there's 3 or 4 different versions of just the regular battle theme that are just the regular battle theme with new orchestration. I'm just like, this just plain works. Enjoy it. Thank you.
And the best one is during the walkout minigame.
That one's pretty great. Yeah.
So that's it for FF7 Remake. You said you had another game.
First Eddie, then we'll come back to me.
Yeah, I've been playing a few stuff. Honestly, sadly, none of what I've been playing have particularly great soundtracks. I've mostly been checking back on games that I already own. Some have received some pretty cool updates. One of them has been Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I've actually done a review for the game on my website, but it's in Portuguese since it's a portfolio for my services in Brazil, where I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. It's kind of a weak entry in the franchise to me. It's a step back from the previous game, but it's still fun on its own. Exploring medieval is the proper word, medieval England. It's pretty interesting. The visuals are great, but the soundtrack has 3 of my favorite artists in the world, 2 of my favorite composers, and 1 of my favorite folk music singers. And somehow the soundtrack just it's very ambient. There are some tracks, particularly by Sarah Schachner, I think it's how she pronounces her surname. Some of her tracks have some interesting instruments that I think are probably ancient Norwegian stuff, but for the most part, the soundtrack is kind of just there. It exists. It fits its role. Even I, the guy who digs ambient music, am just not wowed by that soundtrack. It was kind of a disappointment, considering the big names. Like every Assassin's Creed fans puts Jesper Kudd and Sarah Schachner in a pedestal for good reason, because their works on previous games like Assassin's Creed 2 and Assassin's Creed Origins, respectively, was pretty iconic. but in Valhalla it kind of falls apart. But the
That's
gameplay is
unfortunate.
nice. Yeah, the gameplay itself it's nice. It's more a combat focus than the previous games. Not as much opportunity for.
I mean, it's
stealth.
about Vikings. If it wasn't combat focused, they're doing something wrong.
Good shanties, though?
It has. You have a singer in your longboat when you are traveling across rivers or between places, and that character is voiced by Einar Selvik, which is the third artist that I brought up. He's
Okay.
the singer for the band Wardruna, which is a folk band from Scandinavia. I'm not sure which country. And those songs are fine. They are cool. I dig his voice a lot, but it doesn't feel as organic to the game world as it felt in Assassin's Creed 4 or in Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Yeah, I get it.
issue.
Even though Odyssey was most surprising of all because I don't think sea shanty and ancient Greek, but then a couple of hours into the OST, I was like, resi permaneta, res prisarmate, and so on and so on.
I mean, I could contest you on that, but then the segment would become the main part of the episode, so I won't.
Let's not do that.
Yeah. But yeah, sadly, I think the fact that it's a single person singing kind of breaks the illusion that they are singing in the setting itself. Kind of makes it clear that it was recorded in a studio. Plus, he plays a harp, and there's no harp to be seen in your longboat, which makes things awkward.
No harp in the longboat, 0 out of 10 unplayable.
It's actually too much water, 2 out of 10. No, actually, it's a liar. I think if we want to be correct, it's a liar.
Too much water. The most incorrectly quoted. This is some serious This is like the McDonald's thing. Did y'all ever hear the actual story behind that?
Oh yes, I did.
Okay.
Yep. I think you shared the video with us.
It was an actual legitimate complaint that they brought down to too much water, and it's just like, this isn't accurate. This guy was saying it's a type of balance. There's too many water types. Stop it. Like, let me play around more. Like, anyway, I'm gonna shut it out. Go on, keep going.
That's about it for Valhalla for me. It's a game that had a lot of things going for it, but it kind of dropped the ball, in my opinion. The other game that I've been playing is, I believe it's indie. I don't think they have any studio, any bigger company behind them. It's an ARPG, a hack and slash ARPG called Last Epoch, which it kind of plays like an in-between of the 3 big recent ARPGs, Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, and Diablo 3, with, in my opinion, the best parts of each of them. I find it very, very fun. It's in early access. Current version is 0.8.4F, I think. It's still in beta.
Okay.
But I've been having tons of fun. The soundtrack, again, it's kind of eh. There's one track that I do enjoy a lot, which plays in a very stormy island when you're going to kill, not necessarily kill, but at least fight a god of the seas and god of seas and storms. And it has a lot of ethereal chanting, which, to those listening to this podcast, it shouldn't be a surprise that I enjoy ethereal chanting.
Shocking.
Yeah, I know. But that's honestly the one standout track. Though there is a possibility that things will improve because they are constantly changing stuff. The 0.8.4 patch changed the main menu theme, for example. So they are composing new stuff. They are constantly redoing visuals as well and changing sound effects too.
Okay.
So maybe the soundtrack will improve. We will see. But I've been having tons of fun just trying out builds. I like that it's an ARPG where I can try out new builds by myself.
Yeah.
Contrary to Path of Exile, where you either follow a preset build done by a better player, or you're done. You are not gonna get anything done in that game. In last epoch, you can experiment. You can play your own style. It's easy to undo stuff and create new builds. And the combat is very, very satisfying. For people who are into hack and slash ARPGs, I think it's an up and coming, and I would keep an eye out for it. The graphics in particular are pretty darn good for an indie game, especially the recent player character model updates. So, thumbs up on the visual side, and on the gameplay, slight thumbs down on the soundtrack. We'll see if it improves. I am a bit miffed that the one track I really enjoy is the one track that's not available on their YouTube channel.
Okay, so for the other game I've been playing Persona 5 Strikers, which is the sequel / spin-off to Persona 5. This is how you do remixing, guys. Like, straight up. This soundtrack is a masterclass in Item 1, when they need to remix something, they know how. A couple of boss tracks got some really cool action remixes that were great. But they also know when not to remix something, because when it came time to take on the first boss, Life Will Change just started playing unchanged, and it's like, yep, we're still in Persona 5 land. This hasn't changed at all.
It has to be familiar in some way.
Yeah. So far, this soundtrack has really impressed me. I honestly think I like the soundtrack more than Persona 5 Regular, which I actually did think was kind of a weak soundtrack at times.
Well, you're wrong, but right at the same time. It is what I assume will be my opinion.
Probably. Are you two about to aggressively agree with one another again?
Exactly. Remind me, have you listened to the Persona Q soundtracks?
I have not. I still need to get to those.
Yes, because I think you will have interesting point of view on those.
I would love to. I wish those games were something other than on a 3DS. I have come to really dislike... One of the disadvantages of streaming is that I feel compelled to kind of stream like the things I play for the first time, unless it's either like an old game that no one cares about or something that isn't appropriate for streaming. Like slower paced games that just take forever. Like, no one wants to watch that. So in the case of Persona Q, like, that's on a 3DS. I don't have a 3DS that's capable of streaming.
And that's a pretty slow-paced dungeon crawler.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that because things are still happening. Like, I'm still, like, running around getting into fights trying to explore. It may be slow, but it's not like... There's a game that came up on a pick a game called Horizon's Gate, and that one had a real problem. You want to talk slow. That game was like... I spent several days doing the exact same thing and feeling like I made no progress.
No.
So that one was a case where that was too slow. Games like that are not really great for streaming. Whereas this game, I feel like I would probably get more out of Persona Q if just because I recognize the characters, I recognize the story, and recognize how to make things happen. That said, yes, I have not heard the soundtrack and would like to find a way to play it that doesn't involve emulation. So if they could release a port of those on some kind of system I could actually stream from, that'd be great.
That would be pretty great.
Steam!
Strikers is on Steam. Strikers is on Steam.
Everyone's releasing stuff on Steam nowadays.
Persona 4 Golden is on Steam. If y'all haven't bought that, you really should. Apparently that sold like really well on Steam, like 750,000 copies or so. 750,000 copies, does that sound right?
That sounds about right, and I certainly bought it.
Yeah, that sold really well on Steam. So please keep telling Atlas we want games on Steam. Please.
I think it was at the top of the best-selling on Steam's homepage for like 2 weeks straight.
Understandably, it's a really good game with a lot of history, and people who aren't totally into Sony are finally getting a chance to play it because Persona has been strictly Sony exclusive for a very long time.
Yes, indeed.
And as someone who cannot afford a console, I'm very happy that Sony is lightening their grip on games. Boy, howdy.
Me too, playing FF7 Remake.
Yup. We live in a time where FF7 Remake and Persona can be played on PC now. This is a good day to be alive. Despite that, I am playing Strikers on my PlayStation 5 because I swore to myself that my first PlayStation 5 game would be Strikers, and That's exactly what I did.
You also got lucky that you could get a PlayStation 5.
I got so lucky that, like, the 22nd of December, my cousin's like, hey, we got them into the store. Do you want me to pick you up one? I'm like, yes, that's a yes.
Good.
So I am lucky in that regard, absolutely.
As far as celebration soundtracks, could do worse than Persona 5 Strikers.
Boy, howdy, that soundtrack so far is really good. I'm very impressed by it. I hope you're impressed by it too one day. Just fair warning, despite it being technically, like, with the 14 asterisks after it, a Musou game, it's not a Musou game at all. It doesn't play like Hyrule Warriors. If that's the game that you're thinking of playing, you're just going to be very surprised. This plays like a Devil Summoner game.
You're going to be the very less surprised, even.
Boo! Good. Look, okay. That's enough out of you.
No, that's not. I still have games to talk about.
Well, then talk about them.
Okay, so talking about indie early access games in version 0.8 and then some, I have started playing RoboQuest.
RoboQuest.
RoboQuest, with a soundtrack made by No Scream, my second favorite type of cream. And these are very strong electronic tunes, very high-paced. Basically, I think, without taking into consideration the music, I would shoot, use my guns, take cover, and play meticulously. With the music, I am jumping, bouncing on the head of one of the robots, punching another in the face before turning around and shooting the first one in the back repeatedly. That was one of my first experience in the tutorial.
I love everything you just said.
Yeah. And it has a co-op mode, by the way. Just putting that out there.
What did you say the name of this game was?
Sorry?
What did you say the name of this game was?
RoboQuest. It's currently on sale for $10.
That's the sound of Galen opening his wallet.
One word. ROBOQ.
Got it. Found it.
Good. And yeah, the weird thing with this game is that the gameplay and the music both are perfectly united in this kind of dark, gritty, high action game, and the visuals are on the opposite of that, very light and fluffy and happy. It's weird.
I just want to point out that I was checking the game here on Steam just to know what Rana's talking about. And Galen got there faster than me, because as soon as the page loaded, it says, one friend wants this game, Galen Firestone.
I literally just hit the wishlist button on it, yeah.
Yep. Well, yeah, and the soundtrack is very good.
Apparently, it's got enough to get you doing some crazy reckless stuff, and I like it.
I mean, the soundtrack better be good, considering it's for sale on Steam for about the same price as the game, at least for me.
Yeah, and it also does this thing I like, where you play one of the large rooms with high-action, blood-pumping soundtracks, and then you go in a safe room, and the music naturally transitions to a sort of intermission musical phrase that's a little bit slower paced, or a little bit less busy, before it resumes in full once you're out of the room and back in the action.
I have a healthy respect for variable mixing, as we all know.
Exactly. I love interesting implementation of music in games.
Absolutely.
All right. Anyone else?
I covered my two. Sounds like we all covered it.
Yep. The only other game I've been really playing these days is some FF14 Endwalker, and that's a whole can of worms that we probably won't have time to get into.
Not today, but I do believe we have an episode forthcoming that's probably going to talk about that at length, and I know I have at least one person who wants to come on as a guest. It's a similar situation to Ryan, it's just someone I know, but they want to talk about it, so I'm like, you know what? Let's bring them on and have them talk about it.
Is it TJ?
No.
Oh.
If you're on my Discord, it's Shadow Mage. I know him as Zeril.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Another one of
Well,
my raiding buddies, but yeah, no, not TJ in this case.
Well, that's going to be interesting. I'm into it. Looking
Yep.
forward to that.
And with that, I think that is all the time we have for this first year anniversary of Music Arcade. We did it! A year!
Yay!
Thank you guys so much for coming by and tuning in. This has been an absolute honor to do the show for you all, and I'm looking forward to another year of this because, man, there's never a shortage of game music, great game music to talk about. Thank you guys for being part of this journey with us. Y'all have yourselves a good one, guys. Take care.
Have a happy new year.
Music.arcade.podcast@gmail.com.